Hello. I'm going to be talking about cyberspace, privacy, data, big data, Facebook and Cambridge Analytica today. We live in times when the power and influence of social media platforms is enormous, huge, cannot be underestimated. I mean, Elon Musk bought Twitter recently for $44 billion US. It shows you how valuable he sees it as, even though he's losing money and firing people right, left, and center. But the impact of social media platforms is something which can't be underestimated. I'm sure many of you use different types. I don't know whether you use TikTok, Discord, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, Twitter. Depending on age, predispositions, and things like that, we tend to use different ones. But having said that, Facebook is an enormously popular, profitable, and big social media platform. Facebook now has about 3 billion members, a huge number. That's almost half the world's population is a member of Facebook. Last week, the world's population reached 8 billion people. So it's very close. It's bigger than any country. China and India have almost 1.5 billion people each, but Facebook beats them all. So we could look at Facebook as a kind of country, which has a very dictatorial kind of government, very autocratic, no real police force, no regulation to speak of. And this gives a company like Facebook almost unfettered power, if you like. And I think it's one that needs to be reined in. There is a view among people who say, what's the point of business? Who say, the only point of business is to make profits for its shareholders. Everything else doesn't matter. Shouldn't care about the environment, shouldn't care about social aspects. Just make money. These days, we do not accept that as sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not a sufficient condition for a business to flourish in. We now have what is called ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance aspects. Sorry, I have to take a drink. Where those particular issues are important. Industrial relations, labor relations, the impact of a company on its users and things like that. It's difficult to say what the ESG aims of something like Facebook are. What we do know the aims of Facebook are, and not just Facebook, but YouTube, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, and so on, is to keep you focused on their product, their website, their app, whatever it may be. The longer you spend with them, with Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, the more money they make. The more they can say to advertisers, look, we have all of these people. Now look, they're spending hours per day on this. They really like it. Pay us for your advertising and we'll make sure that advertising reaches them. And of course, as I've said before, you press those like buttons, you write your comments, you write to friends and so on. All of that data is being analyzed by Facebook in a way that allows Facebook to say, we know what people like, we know what they don't like, and so we can help you use the right kind of advertisements to get to those people. You might have a bunch of people who really like energy drinks, Iron Brew, Red Bull, something like that. But they would know I never drink this stuff, and I don't. Never had either. Don't want to. Don't even like Coke. Let's make sure that people like him who don't drink this stuff, you don't waste your money on advertising to him, because he's not going to succumb to that kind of thing. But other people will. So you might persuade people to drink more Red Bull than they used to. This is what Facebook is all about. This is why it wants you to press those likes and so on in that way. And you will notice on something like Facebook, there aren't really what we would call dislike buttons. There are, you can register some emotions, a little bit sad or something like that, but not really. So it's like or not in that way. Now, that gives Facebook a tremendous amount of power in the way it can influence people around the world. It also means it's very hard to moderate what goes on. Now, we all believe in free speech, but free speech does have some limitations. If you're in a crowded cinema and you shout fire, fire, and suddenly people leap up and they start running for the exits and people get squashed and injured and so on, and there is no fire, that is not permitted free speech. You're not allowed to do that. In fact, you'll be punished for that. So we know there are limits in that way, quite rightly so. The question is, do those limits include things like racist speech, sexist speech, information which prevents people from getting COVID vaccinations when we know they do good? All of those things, we have to raise these questions. Now, Facebook is not a moral guardian. I doubt, Facebook even spends hardly a moment wondering about, the state of your moral health or anything like that. It really thinks about how much profit it's going to make and how its shareholders will continue to like it. And as you can probably gather from recent events, they don't like it as much as they should. Facebook's laid off over 11,000 employees recently because the tech industry is not doing quite so well at the moment. Now, because of this, it means that people want to get hold of the information that Facebook has because it's very valuable. Facebook obviously puts limitations on how it gives data to other people. We have data guidelines, data protection guidelines, and things like this. In a later session, you'll come across the GDPR, which is the General Directive on Privacy Regulation in the EU, which affects the whole world, even though it's EU, it still affects Australia. So there are limits. Now, at the time of the US elections, presidential elections in 2016, thereabouts, the right wing, the Trump people, the Republicans and what have you, they wanted to make sure that their advertising dollars went to the people who were going to vote for them, the people they could persuade. But they needed to know who those were. That was difficult to find out. So they hired a company called Cambridge Analytica, who said, we can help you, target your advertising more efficiently. So they looked around and they found a couple of Stanford scholars who'd done some research on people's behavior profiles on Facebook. And so they asked them if they could use the data set they had collected. It's quite a large data set. And they said, yes, provided you pay us for it. We want $500,000 US dollars, million, somewhere around that order. Cambridge Analytica, being cheap people, said, no, we're not going to pay that. We want you. So they said, we'll create our own data set. So they hired a Russian behavioral psychologist who created a game on Facebook which would get people to disclose their desires and behaviors and things like that. But in the terms and conditions of that game, and remember, nobody, including me, nobody reads terms and conditions. You just go through to the end and click agree in order to get to the next page. In their terms and conditions was something which said, oh, and when you say yes, you give us access to all your friends' data as well. So one person says yes, and then several thousand other people have, without consent, given their data away as well, or had their data taken from them. They haven't given it away. It's been taken from them, stolen from them. And in this way, Cambridge Analytica created a multi-million person data set which enabled them to go back to the Republicans and the other people and say, right, here you are. We can now tell you how to advertise. We can advise you in a micro-targeted way how to do this. It made huge amounts of money out of it. They also used it. The Russians were interested in this. The people who were trying to persuade Britain to leave the European Union were interested in it. So it became a very popular and appealing kind of data set and analysis that Cambridge Analytica had done using the Facebook data. Now, of course, this all happened under the radar, and then as it came out, as there were whistleblowers, and you'll see that in the materials that you've given, there are at least 2 whistleblowers accounts there, and it's important to read them, watch them. People were horrified. What, my data was given away and I didn't have any consent to this. Facebook tried to downplay it. Cambridge Analytica said it wasn't our fault. Clearly it was. We know the result was that Cambridge Analytica was closed down. Facebook had to apologize many times over and so on. But interestingly, the effects of these things were that after that, over the next 6 months, Facebook's membership declined hugely. And then it went back up again. So people were outraged, and then they realized, oh, wait a minute, we use this all the time. We depend upon it to keep in touch with people. So it went back up again. So these kinds of disturbances, if you like, are relatively short-lived in their effect. And the company grows from strength to strength. This means we need a lot more external regulation than we now have, that's for sure. But we do see these things, happening increasingly around the world. There are hundreds of thousands of cyber attacks on every company, university, institution around the world now, every day. We know the North Koreans hacked the National Health Service computer system in the UK and held it to ransom. They had very primitive Microsoft Windows software that hadn't updated forever and so on. We know recent Medibank data dumps, hackings, all because they got hold of one user ID and one password. That was enough to get them inside the system. Same with Optus and so on. So this is happening more and more and more. Are governments doing anything about it? Well, they are and they aren't, in the sense that they realize their systems are not very secure as well. So they want to come too hard on the companies that have been breached. I mean, they should be compensating all the users. They should be paying for any new driver's licenses, Medicare cards you get, and so on. We're not seeing a lot of that happening at the moment. So, this is going on. So, I would say at the moment, social media is still a wild west. The platforms still have the same aim, which is to make as much money from their users as possible. Are they policing themselves? To some extent, they have oversight boards and things like this. Are they very effective? Probably not. Have they cleaned it up? Probably not. Look, I mean, for Facebook, they need monitors who can read Burmese, all kinds of languages, not just English, because we know that in Burma, when the Rohingya, the Muslim minority, was being persecuted by the Buddhist majority, a lot of it was being done on Facebook. And a lot of the posts were not being removed because nobody could read them except the people concerned in this way. So these platforms need to invest a lot more money in making sure that they are monitored properly. This will go on more and more, I'm afraid, but we need to keep up to it. So this is an introduction to this week's materials. Look at them because it's important. It's going to affect you, and it's going to affect you for a long, long time. Thank you very much. Bye.